My name is Amber Reynolds, and I'm 34 years old. I still remember that 4th of July party like it was yesterday. I arrived at my sister Jessica's lakeside home, excited for Lindsay, my 8-year-old daughter, to spend time with family. I left her playing with her cousins while I caught up with relatives. Despite my strained relationship with Jessica, I hoped today would be different. Then I heard crying dismissed at first until I realized it was Lindsay's. I rushed upstairs to find my beautiful daughter completely bald, traumatized, with tears streaming down her cheeks. Her precious blonde hair lay scattered across the bathroom floor. Jessica stood there, electric clippers in hand, laughing. "It's just a joke, Amber," blatant up. Before I continue, where are you washing from today? Hit that subscribe button and like if you've ever dealt with toxic family members. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this ends. Being a single mom hasn't been easy. The divorce from Lindsay's father, Michael, 3 years ago left me scrambling to rebuild our lives. I work as an administrative assistant during the day and pick up bartending shifts 3 nights a week just to make ends meet. My parents help when they can, but they live 2 hours away and have their own limitations. Despite our challenges, Lindsay and I have created a beautiful life together. We have our small apartment, our weekend traditions, and most importantly, we have each other. Lindsay's hair had always been her crown and joy. Old and blonde like spun sunshine, it cascaded down her back in natural waves that I could never achieve with my own mousy brown locks. She'd been growing it since she was 4, inspired by her Rapunzel phase that never quite ended. Every night, we had our ritual 20 strokes with a soft brush that had been a gift from her grandmother, followed by a loose braid to prevent tangles. While I brushed, she'd tell me about her day, her triumphs, her worries, her dreams. It was our sacred time. Just last month, Lindsay had been featured in the local community paper after winning the Spectacular Strands contest at her school's spring fair. The photographer captured her mid-twirl, hair fanning out around her like a golden halo. She'd been so proud, tearing the clipping in her unicorn folder to show anyone who'd give her a moment's attention. Then there's Jessica, my younger sister by 2 years. While I struggled as a single mom, Jessica seemed to sail through life with effortless success. She married Tom Bradford, a financial advisor whose family had old money, right after college. They built a sprawling lakeside home that looked like it belonged in Architectural Digest and had twin boys, Ethan and Noah, who happened to be the same age as Lindsay. Jessica worked part-time as a wellness consultant, whatever that meant, and spent the rest of her time at boutique fitness classes and charity luncheons. Jessica had always been competitive, but after I became a single mom, her attitude toward me shifted from competitive to condescending. She offered helpful advice about my parenting, my career choices, even my appearance, while thinly veiled criticisms. And then there were her pranks. Jessica had a long history of practical jokes that crossed boundaries. On my 21st birthday, she'd invited my crush to my party, only to make out with him herself. When I got my first professional job, she called my new boss pretending to be from my doctor's office, saying I had a highly contagious skin condition and couldn't start for 2 weeks. She always used the same defense. "It's just a joke, you're so sensitive." Our parents, Martha and Edward Reynolds, had always been conflict avoidant. They'd laugh nervously at Jessica's jokes, tell me not to take things so personally, and change the subject. Over the years, I learned to keep my distance from Jessica as much as possible, but family gatherings were unavoidable. The annual 4th of July party at Jessica and Tom's was the biggest event of the year for the extended Reynolds clan. Hunts, uncles, cousins, everyone attended. I considered skipping this year's party, but Lindsay had been looking forward to swimming in the lake and seeing her cousins. Despite their mother's shortcomings, Ethan and Noah were good kids, and Lindsay enjoyed their company. So I pushed aside my reservations and decided to go for Lindsay's sake. The party started pleasantly enough. Jessica greeted us with her picture-perfect smile, complimenting Lindsay's sundress though not her hair, which Lindsay had styled herself with a braided crown. Tom manned the grill, friendly as always in his American flag apron. My parents arrived shortly after us, bringing their famous potato salad and eager to see their grandchildren. Lindsay quickly joined her cousins for a water balloon fight in the spacious backyard, her long blonde hair secured in a ponytail that swung as she ran and laughed. As I sipped lemonade on the deck, watching Lindsay play, Jessica slid into the chair next to mine. "She's getting so big," she commented, following my gaze to where Lindsay was giggling with the twins. "Must be hard doing it all on your own." I tensed, waiting for the barb disguised as sympathy, but Jessica just sighed and added, "The boys adore her, you know." They're always asking when Cousin Lindsay is coming over. For a moment, I allowed myself to hope that maybe things were changing between us. Maybe Jessica was finally maturing, finally seeing me as a peer rather than competition or a cautionary tale. I smiled and relaxed slightly, letting my guard down for the first time in years. That was my first mistake. I had been chatting with Aunt Diane about her recent hip replacement when I first heard the crying. The sound was faint, coming from somewhere inside the house, and I initially dismissed it as one of the younger cousins having a typical meltdown over sharing toys or wanting more cookies before dinner. But something in the pitch of the cry caught my attention, a particular note of distress that I recognized on a visceral level. That was Lindsay's cry, not a tantrum cry but a sound of genuine anguish. I excused myself from Aunt Diane mid-conversation and hurried toward the house, my heart rate accelerating with each step. The crying grew louder as I entered through the back door into the kitchen, then clearer as I climbed the stairs to the second floor. It was definitely Lindsay, and she sounded terrified. "Lindsay, honey, where are you?" I called out, my voice tight with worry. A choked sob came from behind the closed door of the main bathroom. I rushed toward it and pushed it open, unprepared for the scene that greeted me. Lindsay sat on the edge of the bathtub, her small body convulsing with sobs. But what stopped my heart was her head completely and unevenly shaved, with small nicks on her scalp where the clippers had cut too close. Her beautiful blonde hair, the hair she'd been growing for 4 years, the hair we brushed together every night, the hair she'd won a contest with just last month, lay scattered across the black and white tile floor like discarded scraps of sunshine. Jessica stood by the sink, electric clippers still humming in her hand, an expression of amusement on her face. Behind her, Ethan and Noah peered around their mother's legs, giggling nervously. "What did you do?" I gasped, rushing to Lindsay and pulling her into my arms. She buried her face against my chest, her tears soaking through my blouse. Jessica clicked off the clippers and shrugged. "It's just a haircut, Amber, don't be so dramatic." "A haircut?" My voice rose in disbelief. "You shaved her head?" Lindsay's body trembled against mine as she hiccuped between sobs. "I didn't want it, Mommy," I said, and no, but Aunt Jessica said it would be fun. Jessica rolled her eyes. "She's fine. I told her it would grow back. Kids are so resilient, unlike some adults who overreact to everything." She placed the clippers on the counter with a dismissive clack. "Besides, now she won't have to spend so much time primping. You should be thanking me." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My arms tightened around Lindsay protectively as rage surged through my body. In that moment, I wanted nothing more than to lunge at Jessica, to make her feel a fraction of the pain she'd caused my daughter. My fingers curled into fists, nails digging into my palms as I fought to control myself. "Lindsay, baby, look at me," I said softly, gently pulling back to look at her face. Her blue eyes were red-rimmed and swollen, her cheeks blotchy from crying. She looked so vulnerable, so violated, with her scalp exposed, showing patches where Jessica had pressed too hard with the clippers, leaving angry red marks. I swallowed hard. "We're going to be okay, I'm right here." Lindsay's lower lip quivered as she reached up to touch her head, her fingers trembling as they met bare skin where her beautiful hair had been just an hour ago. "Mommy," she whispered, her voice cracking, "how do I put it back?" Those 5 simple words shattered what little composure I had left. The innocence of her question, the heartbreaking hope that this could somehow be undone, it was almost more than I could bear. The bathroom door pushed open wider as Tom appeared, a beer in hand. "Hey, what's all the—" He stopped mid-sentence, his eyes widening as he took in the scene. For a moment, a smile started to form on his face, the automatic response to one of Jessica's jokes, but it quickly faded as he registered Lindsay's distress and my fury. "Jess," he said slowly, "what happened here?" Before Jessica could answer, Aunt Diane appeared behind Tom, having followed the commotion. She gasped audibly, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh my lord, that poor child's hair." Jessica's stance shifted slightly, a defensive edge entering her voice. "Everyone needs to calm down. It's just hair, it grows back." "She didn't want a haircut," I said through clenched teeth, struggling to keep my voice steady for Lindsay's sake. "She certainly didn't ask to have her head shaved. You had no right." "Actually," Jessica countered, tossing her own perfectly highlighted hair, "she did agree, didn't you, Lindsay? We were playing beauty salon, and you said I could cut your hair." She looked pointedly at Lindsay, her expression hardening almost imperceptibly. Lindsay shrank back against me. "And no," she whimpered. "You said just a little trim. Then the boys held my hands and you started shaving and wouldn't stop when I cried." The twins looked at each other nervously, their earlier giggles fading as they sensed the tension in the room. Mom said it would be funny, Ethan blurted out, earning a sharp glance from Jessica. She said cousin Lindsay was too vain about her princess hair. By now, more family members had gathered in the hallway outside the bathroom, drawn by the commotion. I heard my mother's voice asking what was happening, then her shocked cry as she pushed through to see Lindsay. My father followed close behind, his usual jovial expression replaced by confusion and concern. "Jessica Louise Reynolds," my mother exclaimed, "what have you done to that child?" As the bathroom became increasingly crowded with horrified relatives, I focused on Lindsay, who was still trembling against me. I needed to get her out of there, away from the staring eyes and Jessica's cruel dismissal of her pain. "Let's go find a quiet place, sweetheart," I whispered, standing up with her still in my arms. Though 8 and normally too big to be carried, she felt small and fragile as she clung to me, her face hidden against my shoulder. As I pushed through the crowd of relatives, I caught Jessica's voice behind me, loud and defensive. "Honestly, you'd think I committed a crime. It's just a practical joke." Amber always did have a flair for melodrama. It took every ounce of self-control I possessed not to turn around and show her exactly what melodrama looked like. I found a quiet corner in Jessica's home office and sat with Lindsay on my lap, rocking her gently as she continued to cry softly. I could hear raised voices from the bathroom, my mother's shrill with disbelief, my father's deeper tone attempting to mediate, Jessica's defensive responses growing louder. The party had effectively ground to a halt, the festive atmosphere replaced by tension that hung in the air like the humidity before a thunderstorm. After about 15 minutes, my mother appeared at the office door, her face pale and drawn. Behind her stood my father, looking uncomfortable in the way he always did when family conflict arose. "Amber, honey," my mother began, her voice strained with forced calm. "We've been talking with Jessica and..." "And what?" I interrupted, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. "She's very sorry and she'll never do it again, just like every other time." My mother sighed, twisting her hands together. "She says she didn't realize Lindsay would be so upset. She thought it was just a bit of summer fun." "Fun," I repeated incredulously. "Look at her, Mom." Lindsay had finally cried herself into exhaustion and was now hiccuping softly against my shoulder, her small hand still periodically reaching up to touch her bare head as if she couldn't quite believe what had happened. "Does this look like fun to you?" My father cleared his throat. "Now, Amber, we all know Jessica can be thoughtless sometimes, but it's a family holiday, and scenes like this aren't good for anyone, especially not for Lindsay." I stared at him in disbelief. "So what are you suggesting? That I pretend everything's fine for the sake of family harmony? That I teach my daughter that it's okay for people to violate her boundaries as long as they're related to her?" "That's not what your father meant," my mother interjected quickly. "It's just that Jessica is very upset that you're so angry." "Jessica is upset." My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm for Lindsay's sake. "Jessica shaved my daughter's head against her will, she made her cry and bleed, and you're worried about Jessica's feelings." The commotion drew more family members. Aunt Diane and Uncle Steve appeared in the doorway, followed by Tom, who looked deeply uncomfortable, and finally Jessica herself, arms crossed defensively over her chest. "I don't see why everyone's making such a big deal out of this," Jessica said, her tone petulant. "It's not like I hurt her." "You didn't hurt her." I carefully shifted Lindsay off my lap and onto the office chair, standing to face my sister. "Then what do you call those cuts on her scalp? What do you call the emotional trauma of having something she loved forcibly taken from her? What do you call being held down by her cousins while she cried and begged you to stop?" Jessica's face flushed. "That's an exaggeration. The boys were just playing along. And those tiny nicks are nothing, they'll heal in a day. Unlike this family gathering that you're ruining with your overreaction." "Why did you do it, Jessica?" I demanded, stepping closer to her. "What was so threatening about an 8-year-old's hair that you had to destroy it?" For a moment, Jessica's mask of indifference slipped, and I caught a glimpse of something ugly beneath something that looked remarkably like satisfaction. Maybe I was tired of hearing about her precious contest-winning hair. Maybe I'm sick of everyone fawning over poor single mom Amber and her perfect little princess, while my boys get ignored. Maybe this family needed a reminder that life isn't all sparkles and unicorns. The room fell silent as her words hung in the air. Even my parents looked shocked at this naked admission of jealousy and resentment. "Jessica," Tom said quietly, "that's enough." Jessica whirled on her husband. Oh, so now you're taking her side. You were laughing too when I told you what I was planning. Tom had the decency to look ashamed. I didn't think you were serious. And I certainly didn't think you'd actually shave her entire head or that the boys would help hold her down. That's not okay, Jess. Of course it was okay. It was a joke, Jessica insisted, her voice rising. Like the time I put hair removal cream in Rebecca's shampoo at summer camp, or when I cut holes in Ashley's prom dress. Everyone thought those were hilarious. No, Jessica, I said quietly, a lifetime of realizations clicking into place. No one thought those were hilarious except you. The rest of us were just too afraid to stand up to you. Jessica's eyes narrowed. Oh, please, don't act like you're some kind of victim. You've always been Mom and Dad's favorite, even more so after your divorce. Poor Amber, struggling so bravely as a single mother. Everyone's so impressed by how you manage. She spat the words like venom. Meanwhile, I'm busting my ass to give my kids everything, to be the perfect wife and mother, and what thanks do I get? Everyone's too busy admiring Saint Amber and her precious mini-me. So you punished my child because you're jealous of me? I asked incredulously. That's your justification for traumatizing an 8-year-old? Jessica rolled her eyes. Traumatizing is a bit dramatic. This will teach her that life isn't fair and that looks aren't everything. If anything, I did her a favor, now she won't be so vain. A favor, I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. Let me tell you something, Jessica. This isn't about vanity. This is about consent. This is about teaching my daughter that her body belongs to her, and no one has the right to touch it without her permission. But you wouldn't understand that concept, would you? You've been violating people's boundaries your entire life and calling it humor. I turned to my parents, who were washing with stricken expressions. And you two have enabled her every step of the way. How many times did I come to you in tears after one of Jessica's jokes? How many times did you tell me to lighten up, to not be so sensitive, to understand that it's just her way of showing affection? My father shifted uncomfortably. Amber, that's not entirely fair. We never condone. You never stopped it, I cut him off. And you're still not stopping it. You're still more concerned with keeping the peace than with protecting Lindsay from Jessica's cruelty. Now wait just a minute, my mother protested weakly. We love Lindsay. We would never want to see her hurt. Then act like it, I challenged. For once in your lives, hold Jessica accountable for her actions. Jessica let out a dramatic sigh. Here we go again, Amber the victim. You know what your problem is, you can dish it out, but you can't take it. When have I ever dished out anything remotely like this? I demanded, gesturing toward Lindsay, who was watching the confrontation with wide, fearful eyes. Please don't fight, Lindsay whispered, her voice small and tremulous. I just want to go home. Her words pierced through my anger, reminding me of what was truly important. I took a deep breath and turned back to Lindsay, kneeling in front of the chair where she sat. You're right, sweetie. We're going home right now. But the fireworks, my father protested. Lindsay was looking forward to the fireworks. Don't punish her because you're angry with your sister. I looked at him in disbelief. I'm not punishing Lindsay. I'm protecting her from people who think it's funny to hurt her. I turned to my daughter. Honey, we'll find fireworks somewhere else, okay? Somewhere with people who respect you. Lindsay nodded, relief washing over her face at the prospect of escape. I stood and addressed the room at large. We're leaving, and until Jessica offers a genuine apology not just to me, but to Lindsay, and until the rest of you start taking this kind of behavior seriously, we won't be attending any more family gatherings. Don't be so dramatic, Jessica scoffed. You'll be back for Thanksgiving, just like always. No, I said firmly, we won't. Lindsay's well-being matters more to me than family tradition. I took Lindsay's hand. Come on, sweetheart. Let's pack up our things. As we walked out of the office, I heard my mother's distressed voice behind us. But what about the holiday? What will everyone think if you leave now? I didn't bother to answer. For the first time in my life, I didn't care what anyone thought. I only cared about the small, trembling hand in mine, and the child who needed to know that I would always protect her even from family. The 40-minute drive home from Jessica's lakeside property felt interminable. Lindsay sat in the back seat, silent except for occasional sniffles. Each time I glanced in the rearview mirror, my heart broke anew at the sight of her bare head, the evening sunlight casting shadows on her scalp through the car window. She had pulled the hood of her sweatshirt up before we left, despite the summer heat, and now she huddled inside it like a wounded animal seeking shelter. Do you want to talk about it, sweetheart? I asked gently as we turned onto the highway. Lindsay shook her head, then whispered so softly I almost didn't hear, "Am I ugly now?" The question hit me like a physical blow. I signaled and pulled over to the shoulder of the road, put the car in park, and turned to face my daughter fully. "Lindsay Reynolds," I said firmly, "you could never ever be ugly. Not in a million years." Her lower lip trembled. "But my hair, everyone loved my hair." "Honey, people loved your hair because it was part of you, but it's not what makes you beautiful." I reached back to take her small hand. "Your kindness, your creativity, your laugh that can brighten a whole room, those are the things that make you beautiful. And no one can ever take those away from you." A tear slipped down her cheek. "But what if kids at camp make fun of me? What if they think I look like a boy?" Camp, I hadn't even thought about that. Lindsay was supposed to start 2 weeks of day camp on Monday, something she'd been looking forward to all summer. Now I understood her additional layer of fear. "If anyone says something unkind, they're showing their own ugliness, not yours," I told her. "But if you don't feel ready for camp, you don't have to go. We can find something else to do until you feel comfortable." Relief washed over her face. "Can we stay home, just for a little while?" "Of course we can," I assured her. "We'll have our own summer adventure." By the time we reached our apartment, Lindsay was physically and emotionally exhausted. I helped her into pajamas, careful not to let my gaze linger on her shaved head, though each glimpse renewed the rage I was struggling to contain for her sake. As I tucked her into bed, she asked in a small voice if we could skip her bedtime story. "I don't want to look in any mirrors," she explained, eyes downcast. I realized then that her favorite bedtime book, The Princess with the Golden Crown, featured a mirror on nearly every page, reflecting the princess's beautiful long hair. Another small joy stolen by Jessica's cruelty. "How about I just sing to you tonight?" I suggested, and she nodded gratefully. I sang the lullabies my mother had sung to me, the ones I'd sung to Lindsay since she was a newborn. As her eyelids grew heavy, she mumbled, "Mommy? Will you still love me even without pretty hair?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Lindsay, I would love you if you had no hair for the rest of your life. I would love you if you grew scales or feathers or fur. There is nothing, absolutely nothing, that could ever change how much I love you." She drifted off to sleep then, but I remained sitting on the edge of her bed, watching the rise and fall of her chest, trying to quiet the storm of emotions raging inside me. Once I was certain she was deeply asleep, I went to the kitchen, poured a glass of wine with shaking hands, and checked my phone. It had exploded with notifications: 3 missed calls from my mother, 2 from my father, and a barrage of text messages. "Mom, please call us back. We're worried about Lindsay." "Dad, your mother is very upset. Jessica feels terrible." "Jessica, sorry you got so upset. You're really overreacting though. It's just hair." "Tom, I apologize for what happened. I can pay for wigs or hair growth treatments, whatever would help." "Aunt Diane, that was beyond the pale, even for Jessica. How is Lindsay doing? Let me know if there's anything I can do." I set the phone down without responding to any of them. The rage I'd been suppressing for Lindsay's sake surged through me now, along with a wave of guilt so powerful it left me gasping. I should have known better than to let Lindsay out of my sight at Jessica's house. I should have protected her from a person who had shown her true colors countless times before. Sleep eluded me that night. I sat in Lindsay's darkened room, washing her sleep, haunted by the image of her terrified face in that bathroom. Around 3 in the morning, she began to whimper, caught in the grip of a nightmare. I rushed to her side, soothing her back to sleep, my heart breaking all over again when her hand instinctively reached for hair that was no longer there. By morning, I had a plan. While Lindsay picked at her breakfast, I made calls first to the pediatrician who could see us that afternoon, then to the summer camp to withdraw Lindsay from the program, finally to my boss to request emergency personal days. I researched children's hair specialists online and made an appointment with one who had experience with childhood hair trauma. After breakfast, I suggested we go shopping for hats and scarves. Lindsay's eyes lit up for the first time since the incident. "Could I get a purple one?" she asked, momentarily forgetting her distress. "Purple is my favorite color now instead of yellow." The sudden shift in favorite color from the sunshine yellow of her lost hair to something completely different spoke volumes about her attempt to redefine herself. The children's boutique we visited had a wide selection of head coverings. Lindsay gravitated toward a deep purple beanie with silver stars embroidered around the edge. As she tried it on, she caught sight of herself in the store mirror, her first full look at her reflection since the incident. She froze, staring at her transformed appearance. "What do you think?" I asked gently, holding my breath. She tilted her head, studying herself from different angles. "It matches my eyes," she said finally, referring to the blue-purple star pattern. Then in a smaller voice, "Am I still pretty, Mom?" The saleswoman, who had been discreetly keeping her distance, stepped forward. She was in her 60s with short salt and pepper hair styled in a chic pixie cut. "May I say something?" she asked, looking to me for permission. I nodded cautiously. She knelt to Lindsay's level. "Young lady, I've been watching you try on hats, and I have to tell you, you have the most perfectly shaped head I've ever seen. Some people look awful with short hair because their heads are lumpy or their ears stick out, but you look like a fairy princess." Lindsay's eyes widened. "Really?" "Really," the woman confirmed. "I've been styling hair for 40 years, and I know these things." She tapped her name tag, which read Alina, owner. Lindsay looked at her reflection again, this time with a hint of wonder. "A fairy princess," she repeated softly. We left the store with the purple beanie, a collection of colorful scarves, and a wide-brimmed sun hat decorated with sunflowers. Alina refused to let me pay full price, whispering to me as she rang up the sale, "I don't know what happened, but that child has the look of someone who's been through something traumatic. My granddaughter had cancer at her age, lost all her hair to chemo. Head coverings made her feel normal again." I thanked her through tears, grateful for this stranger's kindness when my own family had failed us so completely. The pediatrician that afternoon was equally compassionate. Dr. Martinez examined the small cuts on Lindsay's scalp, confirming they weren't infected, then asked gently about what had happened. When Lindsay haltingly described the incident, tears streaming down her face, Dr. Martinez didn't dismiss her pain or tell her it was just hair. "Lindsay," she said seriously, "what happened to you was wrong. No one has the right to touch your body without permission, including your hair. It wasn't a joke, it was a violation." She looked at me over Lindsay's head. "I'd like to refer you both to Dr. Rachel Chen. She's a family therapist who specializes in childhood trauma. This isn't something you have to navigate alone." As we left the office with the referral in hand, my phone buzzed with another text from my mother. "Your father and I are coming by tomorrow to talk. This has gone on long enough." I stared at the message, then turned my phone off completely. Lindsay needed me fully present, not distracted by family drama. Whatever my parents had to say could wait until I had helped my daughter begin to heal. That night, as I tucked Lindsay in, she asked the question I'd been dreading. "Why did Aunt Jessica do it, Mom? Was it because I did something bad?" "No, sweetheart," I said firmly. "You didn't do anything wrong, Aunt Jessica." I paused, searching for words that would explain adult cruelty without burdening an 8-year-old. "Aunt Jessica has always had trouble with her feelings. Sometimes when people feel bad about themselves, they try to make others feel bad too. Like Darla at school, who said my science project was stupid after hers didn't win." I nodded, impressed by her insight. "Exactly like that. But that doesn't make it okay, and it's not your fault." Lindsay considered this. "Will my hair grow back?" "Yes, absolutely," I assured her. "It will take some time, but it will grow back. Will you help me make it pretty again?" "I'll help you however you want," I promised. "But remember what Alina said, you're beautiful right now, exactly as you are." Lindsay touched the purple beanie she'd insisted on wearing to bed. Maybe I can be a fairy princess with short hair for a while." I smiled through the tears that threatened. The most beautiful fairy princess in all the kingdom. As I kissed her goodnight and turned out the light, I made a silent promise. I would do whatever it took to help Lindsay heal, to rebuild her confidence, and to protect her from anyone, family or not, who might hurt her again. What I didn't realize then was how much I would need to heal as well, or how this crisis would force me to confront toxic patterns I'd been accepting my entire life. The morning after our pediatrician visit, I woke to a quiet apartment. Checking Lindsay's room, I found her still asleep, the purple beanie pulled down over her eyes. I took the opportunity to check my phone, which I'd left powered off overnight. Among the missed calls and texts was a voicemail from Dr. Rachel Chen's office, confirming an appointment for the following day. I hadn't expected to get in so quickly and felt a wave of gratitude that Lindsay wouldn't have to wait long for professional support. There was also an email from Alina at the Hat Boutique, with links to children's support groups for hair loss and alopecia. Though Lindsay's situation was different, Alina thought the resources might help her connect with other children experiencing similar challenges. Her thoughtfulness brought tears to my eyes, this stranger showing more care for my daughter than my own sister had. As I was making breakfast, I heard a tentative knock at the front door. Looking through the peephole, I saw my parents standing in the hallway, their expressions grim. I sighed, steeling myself for the conversation ahead. "We need to talk," my father said as soon as I opened the door. "This has gone far enough." I stepped outside into the hallway, pulling the door nearly closed behind me to ensure Lindsay wouldn't overhear. "If by this you mean Jessica's assault on my daughter, then yes, it has gone far enough. In fact, it should never have happened at all." My mother flinched at the word assault. "Don't you think that's a bit extreme, Amber? It was a thoughtless prank, but—" "It wasn't a prank, Mom," I interrupted. "Lindsay said no. She cried and begged Jessica to stop. The boys held her down while Jessica kept going. That's not a prank, that's assault." My father ran a hand through his thinning hair. "Look, no one's saying what Jessica did was right. She admits she went too far. But she's family, and family forgives each other." "Does Jessica actually admit she went too far?" I challenged, because her text to me said I was overreacting. My parents exchanged glances. "Well," my mother hedged, "she acknowledges that maybe she should have checked with you first." "That's not the same thing as admitting she was wrong," I pointed out. "And it's certainly not an apology to Lindsay, who's the one she hurt." "That's why we're here," my father said. "Jessica wants to apologize in person. She's suggested a family dinner this weekend so everyone can move past this unpleasantness." I stared at them in disbelief. "Lindsay is traumatized. She's afraid to go to summer camp, afraid to look in mirrors, afraid people will think she's ugly. And Jessica wants to move past this unpleasantness over dinner this weekend." "Amber," my mother said, her voice taking on the placating tone she'd used throughout my childhood when mediating Jessica's conflicts, "I know you're upset, but holding on to anger isn't healthy. Lindsay takes her cues from you. If you keep treating this like a tragedy, she'll believe it is one." Something inside me snapped. Years of suppressed frustration and hurt bubbled to the surface. "No, Mother. Lindsay believes it's a tragedy because it is one to her. Her bodily autonomy was violated, her trust was betrayed, her feelings were dismissed, and now you're asking me to minimize her pain to spare Jessica's feelings, just like you've been doing our entire lives." My parents looked stunned at my outburst. We'd played our assigned roles for so long, Jessica the troublemaker who was never truly held accountable, me the peacemaker who absorbed the hurt and moved on, that my deviation from the script seemed to genuinely shock them. "We're just trying to keep the family together," my father said weakly. "At what cost?" I asked. "Lindsay's well-being, her sense of safety, her trust in the adults who are supposed to protect her. That's too high a price, and I won't pay it anymore." My mother's expression hardened. "So what are you saying? That you're cutting us off? That we can't see our granddaughter?" "I'm saying that I need you to respect my boundaries as Lindsay's mother. I need you to understand that what Jessica did was seriously wrong, not just a joke that went too far. And I need you to stop pressuring us to get over it on Jessica's timeline." I took a deep breath. "Lindsay has an appointment with a child therapist tomorrow. Once we've had that consultation, I'll have a better understanding of what she needs to heal. But until then, no, we won't be attending any family dinners with Jessica." My father looked like he wanted to argue further, but my mother placed a restraining hand on his arm. "We should go," she said stiffly. "Clearly Amber needs more time." As they turned to leave, I called after them. "If you want to see Lindsay, you're welcome to visit without Jessica. She loves you and needs her grandparents right now. But I need to know you're on her side." They paused but didn't turn back. My mother nodded once, tersely, before they continued down the hallway toward the elevator. I leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted despite the early hour. It was the first time I'd ever truly stood up to my parents about Jessica's behavior, and while it felt empowering, it also left me drained. I wondered if they would relay my words to Jessica or if they would soften them, rewriting the narrative as they had so many times before to maintain their illusion of family harmony. Back inside the apartment, I found Lindsay awake and sitting at the kitchen table, the purple beanie pulled low over her. "Were Grandma and Grandpa here?" she asked, picking at the edge of her placemat. "They stopped by to check on you," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "Are they mad at me for ruining the party?" I sat down beside her, taking her small hands in mine. "Lindsay, listen to me. You did not ruin anything. What happened wasn't your fault. and no one is mad at you. Grandma and Grandpa are sad that you're sad, that's all." She nodded, not entirely convinced. "Is Aunt Jessica sorry?" The question caught me off guard. I considered sugarcoating the truth, then decided against it. Lindsay deserved honesty, even if it was difficult. "I don't know, sweetheart. She hasn't told me that she is." "Oh," Lindsay's face fell. "Ethan texted me. He said his mom told him I'm being a baby." My heart clenched. "When did Ethan text you? You don't have a phone." "On my tablet. We play Minecraft together sometime." I made a mental note to check Lindsay's tablet later. "Honey, you're not being a baby. Your feelings are completely valid, and anyone who says otherwise is wrong, even if that person is an adult." Lindsay seemed to consider this. "Dr. Martinez said it's okay to be sad and mad when someone hurts you." "Dr. Martinez is absolutely right," I affirm, "and tomorrow we're going to meet Dr. Chen, who helps kids talk about their feelings when something upsetting happens. Will she make me not sad anymore?" I brushed a gentle hand over the beanie covering her head. "She'll help you understand your feelings and learn ways to feel better. But it's okay to be sad for a while. Healing takes time." After breakfast, I called Grace Peterson, a friend from college who had become a family attorney. I hadn't been sure if legal action was appropriate, but I needed to understand our options. Grace listened without interruption as I explained what had happened. When I finished, her voice was tight with controlled anger. "What Jessica did could be considered assault and battery on a minor," she said bluntly. "If Lindsay was held down against her will while Jessica cut her hair, that's a crime, Amber. It doesn't matter that Jessica is her aunt." "I don't know if I want to press charges," I admitted. "That seems so drastic, and the family fallout would be enormous." "The family fallout is already enormous," Grace pointed out. "And sometimes legal consequences are the only thing that gets through to people like Jessica. But that's your decision, and there are other options. Such as a restraining order might be appropriate, especially given Lindsay's ongoing distress, that would legally prevent Jessica from contacting either of you." I considered this. A restraining order felt less aggressive than criminal charges but would still send a clear message that Jessica's behavior had crossed a line. "I'll think about it," I promised. My next call was to Lindsay's school counselor, Miss Winters. Though it was summer break, I wanted to ensure she was aware of the situation before school resumed in the fall. Miss Winters was appropriately horrified by what had happened and immediately offered to connect us with resources. "I know of a wonderful support group for children dealing with hair loss," she said. "It's primarily for kids with medical issues like alopecia or cancer treatment, but they welcome any child struggling with hair-related trauma." Through this connection, we met Mia, a 10-year-old with alopecia universalis who had lost all her body hair at age 7. Despite her condition, Mia radiated confidence and joy. She took Lindsay under her wing immediately, showing off her collection of wigs and scarves, teaching Lindsay how to wrap a turban, and demonstrating different ways to decorate a bald head with temporary tattoos and gems. "The best thing about having no hair," Mia confided to Lindsay during their first playdate, "is that I can be whoever I want each day. Sometimes I'm a redhead, sometimes I have blue hair, sometimes I'm just me with my fancy head design." Lindsay had listened with wide eyes, absorbing this perspective that transformed her situation from a tragedy into a canvas for creativity. That evening, she asked if we could get some temporary tattoos for her scalp. "Just until my hair grows back," she explained, "like Mia has." The next day, we met with Dr. Rachel Chen, a petite woman with a calm presence and kind eyes. She spent the first 20 minutes with Lindsay alone, then invited me to join them. "Lindsay has shared with me what happened at the family party," she said as Lindsay sat beside her, fidgeting with the edge of her beanie. "We've agreed that I can tell you what we discussed. Is that right, Lindsay?" Lindsay nodded, giving Dr. Chen permission to continue. "Lindsay is experiencing what we call an acute stress response," Dr. Chen explained. "She's struggling with feelings of shame, vulnerability, and a loss of trust in people she thought would protect her. These are all normal responses to what happened, which was a significant violation of her personal boundary." I nodded, relieved that Dr. Chen wasn't minimizing what had occurred. "I've recommended that Lindsay attend weekly sessions with me for the next month, and then we'll reassess," Dr. Chen continued. "I'd also like to have a few sessions with just you, Amber, to discuss strategies for supporting Lindsay at home." "Of course," I agreed readily. "Whatever will help." Dr. Chen smiled. "I think it's important that you know Lindsay expressed something very important today. She told me she feels safe with you. she said. My mom protected me when Aunt Jessica wouldn't stop. That's significant. Many children in similar situations feel their caregivers failed to protect them, but Lindsay knows you're in her corner. Tears pricked my eyes as I reached for Lindsay's hand. She squeezed back, a small but meaningful gesture of trust. As we were leaving, Dr. Chen pulled me aside while Lindsay gathered her things. There's something else you should know, she said quietly. What happened to Lindsay wasn't just emotionally harmful, it was assault. As a mandated reporter, I would normally be required to report this to Child Protective Services. However, since you've already taken appropriate steps to protect Lindsay and seek help, and since the perpetrator doesn't have ongoing access to her, I've determined that filing a formal report isn't necessary at this time. She handed me a card. This is a colleague of mine who specializes in family trauma and boundary setting. I think you might benefit from talking with her about your sister and parents. What happened to Lindsay didn't occur in a vacuum, it's part of a family system that needs addressing. I took the card, recognizing the truth in her words. The incident with Lindsay's hair wasn't just about Jessica's cruelty in the moment. It was the culmination of a lifetime of boundary violations that had been normalized and excused. On the drive home, Lindsay was quieter than usual, processing her session with Dr. Chen. Finally, she asked, "Mom, Dr. Chen said what Aunt Jessica did was wrong, and that it's not my job to make her feel better. Is that true?" "Yes, sweetheart, that's absolutely true," I confirm. "Your job right now is to take care of yourself and your feelings. It's not your responsibility to make Aunt Jessica feel better about what she did." Lindsay nodded, satisfied with this answer. Then she said something that showed just how much she'd taken from her first therapy session. "Dr. Chen says everyone's body belongs to them, and no one has the right to touch it without permission. Even hair." "Dr. Chen is very wise," I said, feeling a surge of gratitude for this professional who had validated Lindsay's experience so clearly. "She says it's okay if I'm mad at Aunt Jessica for a long time," Lindsay continued, "and that I don't have to see her until I'm ready, even if that's never." The word never hung in the air between us, heavy with implication. I wondered if it would indeed come to that, the permanent severing of ties with Jessica. The thought brought a complex mixture of sadness and relief. "That's right," I confirm. "You get to decide who you spend time with, especially people who have hurt you." Lindsay seemed to absorb this, her small face solemn beneath the purple beanie. Then she turned to look out the window, watching the world pass by, perhaps imagining a future where she had more control over her life and body than she'd had in that bathroom on the 4th of July. As for me, I was beginning to understand that protecting Lindsay meant more than just comforting her after she'd been hurt. It meant creating an environment where her boundaries were respected and her voice was heard, even if that meant fundamentally changing our family dynamic. It meant teaching her that she had the right to say no, and that no one, not even family, had the right to override that. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time since finding Lindsay crying in that bathroom, I felt like we had a map to guide us. The calendar on our kitchen wall showed August 15th, exactly 6 weeks since the 4th of July incident. I stood in front of it, sipping my morning coffee, marveling at how much had changed in that relatively short time. Lindsay's hair had begun to grow back, a soft fuzz covering her scalp that she liked to rub when she was thinking. The angry red nicks from Jessica's clippers had long since healed, leaving no physical scars. The emotional healing was taking longer, but there too, progress was evident. Dr. Chen had been a godsend. In the weekly sessions Lindsay attended, she used art therapy, role-playing, and age-appropriate discussions about bodily autonomy to help Lindsay process her trauma. The shame that had initially overwhelmed her was giving way to a tentative new confidence. Just last week, she had gone to the community pool without a swim cap for the first time, sporting temporary unicorn tattoos on her scalp that had made several kids exclaim with admiration. I had been seeing Dr. Chen's colleague, Dr. Miranda Patel, who specialized in family trauma. Our sessions had been challenging but illuminating, forcing me to examine the dysfunctional patterns that had defined my relationship with Jessica since childhood. Dr. Patel helped me recognize how I had internalized the role of peacemaker, prioritizing family harmony over my own well-being and now, over Lindsay's. "The family system you grew up in taught you that Jessica's feelings matter more than yours," Dr. Patel had observed during our second session. "That's why standing up to her now feels so disloyal and uncomfortable, even though you know it's right." She was right. Despite everything, part of me still felt guilty for causing trouble in the family. My parents had maintained sporadic contact, visiting Lindsay a few times but always with an undercurrent of tension. They continued to press for reconciliation with Jessica, though less insistently as the weeks passed, and I held firm to my boundary. Jessica, predictably, had not taken my stance well. After my parents reported that I wouldn't be bringing Lindsay to any family gatherings where Jessica was present, she launched a campaign to paint herself as the victim. First came the Flying Monkeys family members and mutual acquaintances who contacted me with variations of "Jessica feels terrible" and "Don't you think this has gone on long enough?" When that didn't work, Jessica escalated. She showed up unannounced at our apartment one evening in late July. I refused to let her in, speaking to her through the chain lock while Lindsay hid in her bedroom. "This is ridiculous, Amber," Jessica had hissed. "She's my niece. I have the right to see her." "No, actually, you don't," I replied, surprised by my own calm. "Lindsay doesn't want to see you, and I'm respecting her wishes. She's 8, she doesn't get to make those decisions. She gets to decide who touches her body and who she feels safe with," I countered. "And right now, that's not you." Jessica's face had contorted with fury. "You've poisoned her against me. You're using this stupid haircut to turn my own parents against me too." "Jessica," I said quietly, "this isn't about me. This is about what you did to Lindsay. Until you can take full responsibility for that and offer a genuine apology, we have nothing more to discuss." I closed the door on her protests and returned to Lindsay, who was sitting cross-legged on her bed, wide-eyed with anxiety. "Is Aunt Jessica going to come in?" she whispered. "No, sweetheart, she's leaving." I sat beside her, putting an arm around her shoulders. "You're safe?" Lindsay leaned against me. "I heard her say I'm stupid." "She didn't call you stupid," I clarified. "She was talking about what happened. But she's wrong either way. What happened was serious, and your feelings about it matter." After that confrontation, Jessica switched tactics. She began posting on social media about family estrangement and how some people use their children as weapons. She never mentioned us by name, but the implications were clear to anyone who knew the situation. I muted her accounts and advised close friends to do the same if they didn't want to be caught in the crossfire. Through it all, Lindsay and I found ways to heal and grow stronger. The support group for children with hair loss had been particularly transformative. Lindsay had formed a special bond with Mia, the confident 10-year-old with alopecia, who had introduced her to an entirely new perspective on hair and identity. During Lindsay's third visit to the support group, a new member joined, a 6-year-old girl named Zoe who had recently been diagnosed with cancer and was about to begin chemotherapy. Zoe sat apart from the other children, clutching her mother's hand, visibly terrified about the changes her body would soon undergo. I watched, heart swelling with pride, as Lindsay approached Zoe with her collection of beanie hats. "You can borrow any of these when you need them," she offered. "The purple one is the softest. And when you're ready, I can show you how to make head tattoos. They're not scary, they're like having a special picture that only you get to pick." The therapists running the group later told me that this moment, Lindsay using her own trauma to help another child, represented a significant breakthrough in her healing journey. Inspired by this experience, Lindsay began collaborating with her art therapist on a project that would eventually become much more than just therapy. She decided to create a children's book about bodily autonomy, titled "My Body, My Rules." The story featured a young girl named Lucy whose magical hair changed colors based on her emotions until a wish cut it off without permission, leaving Lucy feeling powerless. But in Lindsay's story, Lucy discovered that her magic wasn't in her hair at all, that was inside her all along. With the help of friends who loved her exactly as she was, Lucy reclaimed her power and grew even stronger than before. The witch was required to make amends by planting a garden of magical flowers for all the children to enjoy. "The wish learns to be kind," Lindsay explained as she showed me her illustrations. "But Lucy doesn't have to be her friend anymore if she doesn't want to." The local children's librarian, Miss Rodriguez, was so impressed with Lindsay's story that she offered to make copies available in the library's self-published collection. This recognition gave Lindsay an incredible boost of confidence and seemed to mark a turning point in her recovery. Our support system had expanded in unexpected ways. Through the parent component of the support group, I met Mark Davidson, a single father whose daughter Lily had lost her hair to alopecia 3 years earlier. Mark's practical advice and unwavering understanding provided a lifeline during particularly challenging moments. When Lindsay had a meltdown after a stranger at the grocery store asked if she was sick like those kids on the cancer commercials, Mark was the one I called, knowing he would understand without judgment. Our friendship deepened over shared experiences and similar parenting philosophies. Mark had also dealt with complicated family dynamics. His ex-wife's parents had initially struggled to accept Lily's appearance, suggesting various cures and treatments that left Lily feeling like there was something wrong with her. Mark's firm but compassionate boundary setting with them had eventually led to greater understanding and respect. Sometimes the hardest part is standing firm when you're the only one who sees the harm being done, he told me one evening as we watched Lindsay and Lily playing an elaborate game of pretend. But that's exactly when it matters most. With Mark's encouragement, I organized a fundraiser at the local community center for the Children's Alopecia Project, a national organization that supported kids with hair loss. Lindsay threw herself into the planning, designing posters and suggesting activities. The event drew unexpected community support, including coverage in the local paper, the same one that had featured Lindsay's spectacular strands win just months earlier. When a reporter asked Lindsay what message she wanted to share with other kids, she didn't hesitate. Your hair doesn't make you beautiful. Being kind makes you beautiful. The woman who had written the caption, "Local Girls Golden Locks Win Contest," now wrote one that read, 8-year-old Tisha's community about courage. The contrast wasn't lost on me or on Lindsay, who proudly hung the new article next to her unicorn collection. As August progressed, another milestone approached. The start of a new school year. Lindsay would be entering 3rd grade, and while her hair had grown enough to form a short pixie cut, she was still nervous about facing the full student body. "What if they laugh at me?" she asked one evening as we picked out first day of school clothes. "Some might," I acknowledge honestly. People sometimes react badly to things that are different or that they don't understand. But remember what Dr. Chen talked about: those reactions are about them, not about you. Lindsay nodded solemnly, "And I have friends who won't laugh." "Exactly. Plus, your teacher already knows what happened, and she'll help make sure the classroom is a safe space." I had met with Mrs. Collins the week before to explain the situation, and she had been wonderfully supportive, suggesting a class project on celebrating differences to start the year. The night before school started, I found Lindsay in the bathroom, studying her reflection with unusual intensity. Her hair had grown into an uneven but adorable pixie cut that I'd helped shape as best I could with home trimmers. She turned to me, her expression serious. "I'm not going to wear a hat tomorrow," she announced. "I want everyone to see my real me." I knelt beside her. "Are you sure? It's completely okay if you want to wear a hat. You don't owe anyone an explanation." Lindsay shook her head. "I'm not hiding anymore. Miss says when you act like something's wrong with you, other people think something's wrong with you too. So I'm going to act like my hair is awesome." I pulled her into a hug, my heart bursting with love and admiration for this remarkable child who had found such wisdom through her pain. The next morning, Lindsay marched into her classroom, head held high, sporting her pixie cut adorned with a single sparkly beret. I watched through the classroom window as she greeted her friends, fielded a few curious questions with prepared responses, and then seamlessly joined a game of Foursquare as if nothing had ever happened. As I walked back to my car, my phone buzzed with a text from Jessica, the first direct contact in weeks. "Mom says Lindsay started school today. How is she doing?" I stared at the message, noting the absence of any acknowledgement of harm or responsibility. After careful consideration, I replied with a simple truth. She's doing well because she's surrounded by people who respect her boundaries and care about her feelings. Jessica didn't respond, but I felt no anxiety about her silence. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for my sister's approval or forgiveness. My priority was the brave little girl who had just walked into her classroom ready to face the world on her own terms, not despite what had happened to her, but in some ways, because of how she had risen above it. 6 months after that fateful 4th of July, winter had settled over our small town. Outside our apartment window, snow fell in gentle flurries, coating the world in pristine white. Inside, Lindsay sat at our kitchen table, tearfully signing her name on the title page of My Body, I Rules, now a professionally printed children's book, thanks to a small local publishing company that specialized in educational material. "How many copies do we have left to sign?" she asked, her tongue poking out slightly in concentration as she added a small heart over the I in Lindsay. 10 more, I told her, sliding another book in front of her. The bookstore wants them by tomorrow for the signing event. Lindsay beamed with pride. In the months since her story had been featured in the library's collection, it had gained attention from educators and child therapists, eventually catching the eye of Sunnybrook Press. The publisher had paired Lindsay's story with professional illustrations, though they'd kept several of Lindsay's original drawings and planned to distribute it to schools and counseling centers as a resource for teaching children about bodily autonomy. Lindsay's hair had grown into a stylish short cut that suited her heart-shaped face perfectly. When asked if she wanted to grow it long again, she had shrugged and said, "Maybe someday, but I like it like this now. It's easier to wash." That simple, practical response represented so much healing. Her hair was now just hair, not a source of identity or trauma, just a part of her body that she had reclaimed control over. Our family dynamics had shifted permanently in the aftermath of Jessica's actions. My parents had eventually stopped pushing for an immediate reconciliation, though they still expressed hope that someday things could be normal again. I had gently but firmly explained that the old, normal, wasn't something I wanted to return to. It had been dysfunctional and harmful, even before the hair-cutting incident brought everything to a crisis point. "I need you to understand something," I had told them during a difficult but necessary conversation in September. What happened to Lindsay wasn't an isolated incident. It was the culmination of a lifetime of Jessica crossing boundaries without consequences. If we pretend otherwise, we're setting Lindsay up to repeat the same patterns I did, accepting mistreatment because it comes from family. To their credit, my parents had listened more openly than I expected. My father had admitted, reluctantly, that they had, perhaps, been too lenient with Jessica over the years. My mother had been more defensive initially but had slowly begun to acknowledge that their conflict-avoidant approach had enabled harmful behavior. They now visited regularly but respected my stipulation that they not relay information about Lindsay to Jessica or pressure us about reconciliation. Our relationship had a new honesty to it, sometimes uncomfortable but ultimately healthy. Jessica herself had gone through several phases in her response to being held accountable. After anger and attempts to portray herself as the victim had failed to get the desired results, she had briefly tried a surface-level apology. "I'm sorry if Lindsay was upset. I never meant to hurt her feelings." When I made it clear that this non-apology wasn't sufficient, Jessica had retreated into icy silence for several months. Then, around Thanksgiving, she had sent Lindsay a card with a gift certificate to a children's clothing store. The message inside read simply, "Thinking of you, love, Aunt Jessica." I had shown the card to Dr. Chen, unsure how to handle it. Her advice had been straightforward: ask Lindsay what she wants to do with it. This is an opportunity for her to practice making decisions about contact with someone who hurt her. Lindsay had studied the card thoughtfully. "Can I keep the gift card but not write back yet?" she had finally asked. "Of course," I assured her. "You get to decide when and if you're ready to have contact with Aunt Jessica." Jessica had sent a similar card at Christmas, this time with a note that showed a glimmer of genuine reflection. "I miss you and think about you often. I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm trying to learn to be better." Lindsay had decided to send a thank you card in response, her first direct communication with Jessica since July. She had written, in her careful third-grade handwriting, "Thank you for the gift card. I got a new sweater. I'm not ready to see you yet, but maybe someday, Lindsay." It was a small step, but an important one, Lindsay setting her own boundaries rather than having me enforce them for her. Dr. Chen had called it a significant milestone in Lindsay's healing journey. Tom, surprisingly, had become an unexpected ally. After the initial fallout, he had reached out separately from Jessica, expressing genuine remorse for his role in what happened. "I should have stepped in immediately," he admitted during a coffee meeting I had reluctantly agreed to. "I've spent months trying to understand why I didn't. Why I initially thought it was funny before I realized how upset Lindsay was." His soul-searching had led him to begin therapy himself, exploring the dynamics in his marriage and his own tendency to enable Jessica's behavior. While he and Jessica were still together, he had taken a firmer stand on certain issues, particularly regarding how they were raising their sons. "The boys are in therapy too," he told me. "They feel terrible about helping hold Lindsay down. They didn't understand what was happening until it was too late, but they're learning about consent and standing up for what's right, even when an adult is doing something wrong. The twins had written Lindsay heartfelt apology letters, which she had accepted with a maturity beyond her years. They occasionally exchanged texts under my supervision, rebuilding their cousin relationship slowly and carefully. As for me, the experience had transformed my understanding of motherhood and family. I had always thought my job was to protect Lindsay from obvious dangers: busy streets, hot stoves, strange adults. I never imagined I'd need to protect her from my own sister, or that doing so would require such a fundamental restructuring of our family relationship. Through therapy with Dr. Patel, I had come to recognize patterns in my own behavior that stemmed from growing up with Jessica. I had been conflict avoidant like my parents, too willing to brush aside mistreatment for the sake of keeping the peace. I had accepted the role of family peacemaker, taking responsibility for managing Jessica's emotions while neglecting my own needs. Breaking these patterns wasn't easy. There were days when the guilt was overwhelming, when I questioned whether I was being too harsh, too unforgiving. On those days, I reminded myself of Lindsay's face in that bathroom, terrified, violated, betrayed by someone who should have protected her. I remembered the therapist's words: if you return to old patterns to ease your own discomfort, you teach Lindsay that her boundaries matter less than family harmony. So I held firm, even when it was difficult. And gradually, it became less difficult. I found strength in setting boundaries, in prioritizing Lindsay's well-being and my own. I discovered that the family who truly loved us adjusted to these boundaries, while those who couldn't respect them perhaps didn't deserve unfettered access to our lives. The support system we had built in the aftermath of the incident had become a chosen family of sorts. Mark and Lily had become regular fixtures in our lives. Mark and I had gradually moved from friendship to something deeper, approaching the relationship with the same careful respect for boundaries that had become central to both our parenting philosophies. Lindsay's friendship with Mia had flourished as well. The two girls, bonded by their shared experience with hair loss though from very different causes, had a unique understanding of each other. Lindsay had been there for Mia during a difficult period when a new medication had given her hope of hair regrowth, only to fail after several months. In turn, Mia had helped Lindsay navigate the occasional insensitive comment from classmates or strangers. As Lindsay finished signing the last book, she looked up at me with an expression that mixed pride with reflection. "Mom, do you think Aunt Jessica will ever read my book?" The question caught me off guard. "I don't know, sweetheart. Would you want her to?" Lindsay considered this seriously. "I think so. Maybe it would help her understand. Like Dr. Chen says, sometimes people do mean things because no one taught them better." Her compassion, emerging from her own painful experience, moved me deeply. "That's very wise, Lindsay." "I'm not ready to see her at Christmas," Lindsay continued, "but maybe we could send her a copy of my book." "If that's what you want to do, we can absolutely do that," I assured her. Lindsay nodded, satisfied. Then she added, "I'm still mad at her sometimes. Is that okay?" "It's completely okay," I told her, pulling her into a hug. "Your feelings are always valid, no matter what they are. Being angry doesn't make you unkind or unforgiving. It just makes you human." Later that evening, after Lindsay had gone to bed, I sat in our living room looking through the finished copy of her book. The final page showed the main character, Lucy, standing tall and proud with her short, newly grown hair, surrounded by friends who loved her. The text read, "Lucy learned that her body belonged only to her. She learned that real love means respecting boundaries. And most importantly, she learned that her worth wasn't in her hair or what she looked like. It was in her kind heart, her brave spirit, and her strong voice that could now say clearly, 'These are my body, my rules.'" I closed the book, reflecting on how far we had come in 6 months. Lindsay had transformed a traumatic violation into a message of empowerment that would now help other children. She had discovered strength she didn't know she possessed. And I had finally broken free from patterns of enabling and peacekeeping that had shaped my entire life. Our journey wasn't over. Healing rarely follows a neat, linear path. There would still be difficult days, complicated feelings, and challenging decisions about family relationships. But we were facing them together, with clearer boundaries and stronger voices than we'd had before. The snow continued to fall outside our window, covering the world in a clean, blank slate. Tomorrow would bring Lindsay's first book signing. Next week would bring another therapy session, another small step forward. The future beyond that was unwritten, but we would face it on our own terms, not as victims of someone else's cruelty, but as authors of our own story. What has been your experience with setting boundaries with family members? Have you ever had to make difficult decisions to protect yourself or your children? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. Remember that your worth is never determined by how others treat you, and it's never too late to stand up for yourself and those you love. Thank you for being part of this journey with us, and I wish you strength and healing on your own path.